wonder where the sky might fall. Yeah, one day so I run until I hit the blessings into the
Okay, everyone. Okay, good morning. Good morning, everyone. You are welcome to the second session of Conversations with Dr. Yamson. Thank you for joining us. If you joined us in our first session, thank you for coming back. And if this is your first time joining the conversation, it's our pleasure to have you and hope to see you again. In our first session, we discussed the state of Ghana's current economic situation and some issues confronting the economy, which included revenue issues, unsustainable debt levels, and macroeconomic decline, among many others. We also looked at the impacts on businesses, their challenges, and how they could respond. Finally, we examined some choices available to Ghana in its long walk to economic stability and growth. In today's session, Dr. Yamson will discuss potential opportunities that exist within this crisis. Though the economy faces significant issues, there are still some opportunities that businesses can leverage to achieve their goals. This is a 1-hour session, and there will be a presentation by Dr. Yamson, and afterwards we will have a question and answer session. Before we start, kindly keep your devices on mute to avoid interruptions. You can also leave your comments and questions in the chats whilst the presentation is ongoing. You are welcome once again, everyone, and thank you. And we hope you all have a great session. So I'll now leave the baton to Dr. Yamson to take over. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you very much. My apologies. I hope you enjoyed the session. As you just heard, the last session, we took a look at the problems that Ghana faces, and together with the businesses operating in this country. Today, what I want to do is to look at some of the opportunities that I believe still exist for businesses. Sometimes the issues confronting us become so huge that we tend to forget that they can actually present great opportunities for us. But let me yes. Yeah, not here. Sorry about the break. Yeah, go on. Go on. So let me just remind ourselves of some of the issues that we spoke about the last time. And I'll be very quick because these are issues that we already are very conversant with. We all know that the pandemic created huge problems for businesses. We still are facing some of those problems. They have been aggravated by the Russia-Ukraine war, which has created a huge upheaval in the geopolitics of the world. The internal issues of debt and debt service complications and the associated issues of deteriorations in our macroeconomic environment have led to huge costs facing businesses operating in this country. And I believe that these are issues that are confronting most businesses. And currently, we also are faced with a potential sovereign debt default unless we can get a quick agreement with the fund. And that alone will also bring a lot of complications to businesses. So generally, these factors led to supply chain disruptions, global shortages of key raw materials, hikes in prices of key raw materials, including crude oil and food. And indeed, we all know the impact of the crude oil price hikes on countries and businesses throughout the world. But it is very interesting that although crude prices have now trended downwards, and recently it came as low as $84 per barrel, in the case of Ghana, our pump price has remained extremely high, simply because any benefit from the declining crude oil prices have been negated by our very fast depreciating currency, and therefore the authorities have not been able to reduce crude oil prices, and therefore the pump prices that Ghanaians pay, which is very sad. It also has led to a global slowdown of economic growth. And indeed, all over the world, the cost of doing business have gone very high. And together with that have been very many global social dislocations. And we all know that, and in fact, we have all felt the issue of even the way we work has been totally dislocated, with many people still working from home, with all the issues associated with, how parents manage their own lives together with working at home and all the disruptions. If I look at Ghana specific, it's led to a deterioration in macroeconomic environment, which we all know, and it still unfortunately continues. The cedi continues to depreciate. This time of the year is the period that Ghanaians should have begun to feel inflation slowing down, but unfortunately that's not the case, because the factors that are driving our inflation, our currency depreciation, and our high interest rates are all still in the environment, and therefore we haven't seen any respite at all. Government has announced and indeed has made contact with the bank, with the fund, and the fund team is here currently. And it's important that the country and the fund come to some agreement within a very short time, because the overhang of debt, both local and external, and their implications for debt service and our ability to even manage our own, government manages its own operations internally, is quite a matter of great worry, because unless that there is some agreement, which would mean that it could rediscover investor confidence, we could be facing very major consequences of the potential sovereign debt default. With that, we've seen quite aggressive flight of capital from Ghana, indeed from all emerging markets, especially following very aggressive interest rate hikes by the US Fed and the Eurobank, and also the UK government has also. So putting all these together, we have seen capital flying away from emerging markets, including Ghana. And of course, in our case, it's been very devastating, because that is pushing our cedi downwards with a very aggressive depreciation and this consequential impact on inflation. And therefore, with the central bank's position about fighting inflation with interest rate hikes, we have therefore seen major price increases. It definitely will have impact on business, but I'll come to that later, because structural adjustment definitely have implications for growth. For some small businesses and medium-term businesses, this surely is existential, because my own experience is that in the early 80s, when we went into major structural adjustment, many medium and small enterprises simply collapsed, because they just could not manage the impact of the complex impact of inflation, depreciating currency, and rising interest rates. And most of them just collapsed, and they were in their hundreds. So it's an area that, for me, is of great concern, and therefore, as a business, we all need to pay great attention. Of course, there have been very many significant market pressures. So the challenge facing businesses is multifaceted, it's complex. It's not something that you just can have a simple answer. And that is why this is the time that businesses need to think deep about whether there are things that they can do to ensure that their business remain viable. Traditionally, when we face situations like this, businesses panic. Most business leaders just panic. They go into firefighting mode. They increase prices. Businesses margins reduce. Of course, demand goes down, and therefore businesses have suffered quite varied issue that with calmness and with patience, businesses can handle it. There's also desperation in markets, in businesses. Most companies and most leaders end up taking very many ill-informed reactive measures. Crisis normally, and as we saw in the case of COVID-19, most businesses were not prepared for COVID-19. And I still believe that most businesses are not well prepared for crisis. And therefore, in situations like this, those measures that we do take are not measures that we have thought through quite deeply. Businesses therefore underperform. There's a lot of widespread uncertainties in businesses. And with that, you then have uncertainties among employees. So in the traditional setting, most companies don't have the time to take very well-informed, well-thought-out decisions, ending up with their businesses suffering. So, but my own experience and the literature will teach us that even in situations like this, businesses can be positive. If you remember, what the churches said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And indeed, we do waste a lot of crises because, well, dramatic change inevitably uncovers fresh insight and points opportunities for growth. Those changes are dramatic, and therefore they tend to blind our minds and our thoughts, and we don't take the time and the time and the calmness to go through and ask some very basic questions. In a change situation, in a fast changing world situation, it's always important, always important that businesses and business leaders think through the crisis, at the same time think through what they can do, not only to contain the crisis, but come out of the crisis in a better form. As Albert Einstein also said, in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. We can look at many situations where crises have given birth to major opportunities. Nobody ever thought that Zelensky in Ukraine can stand up to the mighty power of Russia. But since the attack from Russia, Zelensky and the whole country of Ukraine have seen great opportunities, and they have rediscovered themselves, and they now can stand up against this mighty power. And why have they been able to do that? They have been able to do that because they didn't panic, they didn't take uninformed decisions. They thought quite deeply and strategically about their situation, what they are faced with, and what they can do. And now we can all see the opportunities and the great achievement that they make in the war front. The same lessons can be learned by businesses. Now, let me ask very basic question. Since this crisis started, our own internal crisis of debt crisis, interest rate hikes, and all the rest of it, how much time have you spent to build deep insights into the current crisis? Alone, as a business leader with your team, and how much have you spent time with your organization as a whole to think through what is happening, think through where you stand as a company, and what you can do much better. So we used to say many years ago, if in the 24-hour period, and you are a business leader, ask yourself, how much of the 24 hours did you spend alone just reflecting on the business you run? Its performance, its opportunities, its difficulties. How much do you, as a leader, how much time? So how much insights have you built since 2019 when COVID-19 started to today that I'm talking? Have businesses spent on reflecting on how their businesses, the challenges they are facing, and the opportunity they are losing or gaining, and the risks that face them, and how they can get out of it? Have you identified your critical vulnerabilities? What are the things that you believe are so critical to you that can be existential to your business? Where are you weak? Where are you strong? Have you spent time as a business leader? Have you spent time with your leadership team? Have you spent time talking to your business as a whole on where you are weak, where you are strong, where you can do better? What are the major developments in your industry? If you are in, say, fast-moving consumer goods industry, or you are in a manufacturing of cement, or you manufacture steel, iron rods, in that particular industry, how is this crisis affecting you? And my question to you is that, are there any companies in your industry today performing better than you are doing? And if so, have you tried to find out why those businesses, even in spite of the great difficulty, those companies are doing better? Let me now switch very quickly, because of time, to what I see in spite of these major issues confronting businesses. I can see 6 potential sources of opportunities for businesses to thrive, and not only to thrive, to come out of this crisis a better, stronger business. And the first one, and those 6 that I can see are leadership, your business model, your technology, your supply chain, your financial management, and your communication. These are the 6 key areas that I can see major opportunities for growth, for resilience, for vitality, for viability. So let me now take a bit of time and go through each of the 6 areas. The first one is leadership. Now, crisis is a leadership test. You must pass it, or you and your company will die. Every crisis is a test for the leadership of that business. Either it is the board, or it is the CEO and his executive team. It is your test to pass that crisis test. And you must pass it. Because if you fail, that means you will not exist. Every crisis is an inflection point. What are your insights? The history has lessons. And when we talk about inflection point, we mean those points that you reach that everything around you changes so dramatically that you either have to have answers or collapse. And those of you who have read a bit of business literature will remember the story of IBM. When IBM was being devastated by desktop computers, and now we have pocket computers and pencils and pens which can do marvelous things. IBM continued with their mainframe and nearly disappeared from the surface of the earth. So that was the test for business. The existing leadership failed. They had to bring somebody from outside. And that is when the book, Who Says Elephants Cannot Dance, came about. So every crisis is a test for leadership. And the leadership must learn lessons from their past and from everywhere in the group, and understand that even in the midst of crisis, that is maybe the opportunity that you have to change. Now, let me go through one by one. Is your leadership the right fit for the business at the time? The time we have today requires businesses that are courageous, that will be the right insights, that can make right judgment, and that can have proactive response. We need that kind of leadership. If you don't have a leader who is courageous, who can make the right judgment, and who can take the proactive response, if the leader is waiting for the CD to depreciate 10%, 20%, 30% before he begins even to discuss it, you are dead. You need a leader who today knows that the CD may, because he's well knowledgeable and can think through and can see that things are evolving very fast. And therefore, he understands, he makes the effort to understand what's going on. He takes the right judgment and he takes proactive response instead of being reactive. Because reactive leadership doesn't take any business anywhere. And when you have taken the decision, be decisive. Because there's nothing like taking a decision and taking 10 years to implement it. And that is why when we have written strategy, we say to people, what is going to define your success is execution, execution, execution. So we need leaders that can lead the execution, that can drive the execution. We also need leaders who can communicate it clearly and honestly. Some leaders don't. There are leaders in the midst of crisis who only tell their teams and their followers only about the bad news. They will never tell them anything about the good news. They will be even encourage them. They won't even have time to motivate them. All they will do is that you can see the CD depreciating, you can see inflation is going up, you can see that we are faced with interest rate hikes, but he's not taking time to think through. Yes, we all know all these things are happening. Does it mean we should close our doors and go away? No. So what opportunity can you as a leader see in this? And we also need leadership that are humble itself enough to build consensus behind their common purpose. Because now you are going to stand up behind your business and say, given all these problems, this is what I believe we should be doing to survive, to thrive, and to grow into the future. If you are not humble enough to build that consensus, you are not going to success again. So we have opportunity in this crisis to look for this kind of leaders. If you believe that your leadership today does not fit this, then as a business, think twice. And let me not even just say this is only about CEOs. This is also about the boards. The board must help the executive to think through what's happening. You don't need a board that will only come and criticize and put pressure, but not offer any ideas, not offer any support, not offer any creative thinking, helping the executive. So both the board and the executive forming the core leadership must make sure that they have the opportunity. And if a business is lucky enough to have such leadership, that is their very first opportunity. Because the leader is the one that is going to make everything happen. So my challenge to businesses and my challenge to all leadership or business that check your list against what I've shown here. Now, if you don't fit this, begin to ask yourself some very interesting questions. The next area of opportunity that I can talk about is about your business model. It's about your business model. Now, most of us and many businesses, many leaders Many leaders and many businesses are still running their businesses today as they were running them pre-2019 COVID-19. They are having four board meetings a year, and they say, no, we have only 4 board meetings a year, so that's fine. We will only be there for 4 times a year. Even when they know that the whole business environment is changing so dramatically that decisions need to be taken and made literally by the hour. So why do you say that the old model of meeting 4 times a year is the same model that you should stay by? Or the chief executive meets his team once every month. So he will sit and wait for the month end before he meets his team. But he knows that within the month, everything would have changed around him. So that kind of business model wouldn't work. So businesses should today start restructuring their model to build operational effectiveness. And it will run through everything you do. It will run through your supply chain, it will run through your HR management, it will run through your finance management, it will run through your logistics, it will run through everything. Because everything you were doing 2 years ago, today, the world we sit in today is so different that you cannot convince anybody that what worked 2 years ago is still working for you and will work for you going into the future. Be flexible to achieve agility. Now, there are businesses where ordinary decisions took weeks and months to take. Meanwhile, those decisions need to be taken today. There are businesses where approval systems take 6 months and they are still taking 6 months when everything around them is just like starting up at the beach and the waves come and the sand is running under your feet and you are still standing there. You just won't exist. How the way you manage risk many years ago cannot be the same. Indeed, your risk profile has changed today. So how many businesses have taken the time to sit and say, look, let's redefine our risk management framework. The model that we use, is it still effective? If you take the banks, now that there is talk about a haircut and whatever, your risk management profile has immediately changed. So those are the areas where you have opportunity to change the rules today for you to become even more competitive than your competitors. If you are the first mover and you take the decisions early and you execute those decisions early and you take the hard choices and hard decisions, to take a hard look at your business model and redefine it completely. Sometimes it will even require you to stop doing many things. And I always ask the question, what are the things that you should stop doing? And what are the things that you should start doing? You don't start doing things, add to those things that you were doing before, which are inefficient and ineffective in today's setting, and believe that they will work. They won't work. So you also need to reshape your business culture. There are business culture and values. You go to business and they will tell you, oh, this is the way we have been doing things here. Now, that's fine. You have been doing things here. You have maybe been successful up to today. But when your business environment today has turned its head upside down, are those cultural values still relevant? Or do you have to take a fresh look? And my advice is that you should take steps to reinvent your organization and look at your operational building blocks, because that is the opportunity for you to remain strong, viable, and to prepare to become a stronger, better business going forward. The next area of opportunity that I can recommend to you is your technology. I don't think I need to say a lot about technology because the whole digital world has changed the way we work, the way we do things, the way we think. And when I go to places where today they're giving you 5 pages of a fork to go and fail. And I say, but are you living in the past? Because if you cannot use this situation as an inflection point to get into the digital economy, to revolutionize the way you work, your models, from your finance, your supply chain to sales and other processes, and everything that you do to gain agility. Because what is important today is your ability to think fast, act fast, deliver fast. Unless you do that, you are being left behind by all these factors. Now, I've said here on the third thing that use constructive destruction to build new business architecture. You can tear up your business model today and say, let us, if we were to start this business over again, given our current business environment, will we structure ourselves the same way? Definitely the answer will be no. Probably you have a very deep reporting system that between the chief executive and the person at the bottom, there are about 10 different levels. Now, information will never reach the man at the bottom. So, and in a situation where you need to act very fast, and you have to act with your team, and you have to act with everybody in your company, that kind of organization structure isn't going to work. Your digital transformation can give you huge opportunity to enhance productivity. Many years ago, when banks were closing branches, all of us were screaming, "Why are you closing branches? I need to go to my branch." Now, I don't remember the last time I went to my branch. I can take my phone and I can do everything I want to do with my bag on my phone. And yet, when the banks were closing branches, and indeed, I remember those days, banks that had many branches were congratulated for having many branches. And yet, what they didn't realize that it cost so much money to run a branch. So when things are changing around you, and you have technology that allows you to weed out a lot of the things that you don't have to do, then my advice to you is that is your opportunity. That's your big opportunity. And I can tell you that the digital opportunity is huge because you can use it to remove cost out of your business, to improve your revenue, to improve your margins, and to improve your profitability by just taking cost out of your business. But most of us and many businesses will tell you, "Oh, it's expensive. If somebody will come and put this app in my phone," but when you are looking at the cost of doing this, look at how much money it will save you and over so many years to come. Now, let me just add one thing. We need to pay attention to innovation. Sometimes when we talk about innovation, we believe that innovation is just about bringing new products. That's not true. Right? You can innovate your supply chain. You can innovate your finance management. You can innovate your logistics management. You can innovate everything you do in your business. But in Ghana, when we plan and we budget, we don't put money aside for innovation. Now, all this will help you to build very high entry barrier. When you have digitized your organization and you have taken cost out, and therefore you have excess money to invest, you can only be the leader in your industry. Supply chain resilience, most companies have suffered a lot more from supply chain distractions than ever. Starting from COVID-19 to Ukraine invasion by Russia to our own local problems. Today, I was in my village over the weekend. I buy coconut for 1 cedi 50 pesos. I come to Accra, it's either 3 cedis or 3 cedi 50 pesos. What has created the difference? The cost of transportation. The fuel price is up. The roads are bad. So if you are a company that is distributing throughout this country, are there new ways of you getting your products there without carrying all the costs? So can you begin to make partnership with your suppliers, your customers, your consumers, and indeed even with government? Because you see, most of you ran out of raw materials because you couldn't get container ships to bring your raw materials. So today you have to sit down and say, if I was holding stocks for 3 months, in fact, those days we even said just in time, so we only hold stocks for 1 week. Today, you may not be able to hold stocks for 1 week. You may begin to say, given the current environment, I may have to hold stocks for 6 months. Because that means that you will not be out of stock, and your customers and your consumers will never be out of stock, and you will improve your availability. So just take a critical look at the way you have managed your supply chain over the years and see whether today there are many companies in Ghana that are predominantly dependent on imported raw materials. Now, if you are predominantly depend on imported raw materials, and these are raw materials you can source locally, then you should begin to think about how do I change the model of sourcing my raw materials. Because if you import, you are faced with currency depreciation. You are faced with delays in shipping. You are faced with very high cost, high freight charges. And these are not going to stop today. And I can tell you, it's something that is going to last for quite a long time to come. Why don't you then begin to think about how do I support the cultivation of the local raw material? I go to the shop, and almost 90% of all the juices there are all imported. And we are all screaming that they are expensive. Yet, this is the season for watermelon. It's everywhere. It's getting rotten. So, even if you are a government, you should begin to think. Because if you want to reduce prices, then you should begin to think the European Union have now begun to understand that being over-dependent on Russia for their crude oil is existential to them. So now they are going aggressively, decisively to diversify their sources of crude oil supply. Must be the same thing for manufacturers in this country. If you can source your raw materials in Ghana, don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till somebody tells you. Don't wait for any government. Think of yourself. How do I reduce my risk of over-depending on imported raw materials? And rebalance that scope. And you can then take a look at, there are places where you place an order, it will take you 6 months, 3 months before the order is delivered. Have you taken a fresh look at it to build agility, nimbleness, speed into the things that you do? How do you reduce costs? Because this is the time, it's an opportunity for you to sit there and say, how do we take costs out of our business? This is the opportunity. And this is the opportunity to say, there are tools that we have today that we can use to reduce the cost of doing business. Well, we can blame it on inflation. We can blame it on depreciation of the cedi. We can blame it on interest rates hikes. But inside your own company, internal in your company, there are costs that you can remove to make you profitable and competitive. Now, let me go quickly to finance so that I can give you time to ask questions. If I take a country, we are where we are because we didn't build buffers. And it's a big lesson that we should learn. And it's the same for businesses. If you don't build big buffers, when the crisis comes, you just don't have any legs to stand on. You run out of cash immediately because you don't have any liquidity legs to stand on. So this is an opportunity for you to begin to think, how do I build buffers going forward. Establish early warning system for forex management. What are the 2 things that you know? As an economist, I know that there are certain things that I can look out for, which signal to me, if I look at the current account balance of that is published by government, I can tell you that we are trending towards high levels of inflation. So build early warning systems for your forex management and create deep understanding of macroeconomic trends. These are the things that will help you manage your financial your finances, so that you don't get into a situation where when a bank doesn't lend you money or when interest rates begin to hike, you have no legs to stand on. And keep asking the what if questions. What if interest rates were to hike, the central bank were to hike interest again by 300 basis points? Or if the city were to depreciate again by another 10%, 15%, or 20%, what are you going to do? So you need every time to ask the what if question and build agility into your operation. Finally, I think communication is the first area that I would like to look at, because it's an area which has great opportunity for businesses. Because leaders must be clear about their company's position so they can communicate it to their employees and their teams. They must be factual, they must be reliable. If you're a leader and you are not telling the truth to your team and your organization, your team will not understand what you're saying and they will not do what you are doing. Be consistent with what you communicate. Be honest with your stakeholders. Be cohesive and not selective. And be compelling in what you believe in and where you want to take your company to. I think I will stop here and allow some time for questions. But those are the 6 areas of opportunities that I think that if we're a business in Ghana, we should begin to look at. And let me go over. I talked about leadership. I talked about your business model. I talked about your technology. I talked about your supply chain resilience. I talked about your finance. And I now talked about your communication. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yamson, for that insightful presentation. So we are now going to take in some questions and comments from our audience. So if you want to ask a question, you can just raise your hand in the chat so that Dr. Yamson can take your question or your comments.
I didn't go to the 6 areas of opportunity. Or they can type in.
You can also type in your questions in the chat so that Dr. Yamson can give answers.
That's it.
Okay, so it seems there are no questions for now.
Okay,
so
if there are no questions, I'd like to assume that you have all now seen big opportunities that you can leverage. And maybe we can be interactive now. I did talk about leadership being an area of opportunity. And I just would like to ask whether anybody on the line sees a new dimension using leadership as an opportunity in a period of crisis for countries, for businesses. Can anybody share his own or her own view? Susie raised her hand. Someone else raised their hand, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Yamson, thank you so much for the insight.
Okay, Susie, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, please confirm if you can hear me. Mr. Yamson, good morning.
I'm listening. I can hear you.
Thank you very much for your insightful delivery this morning. In your
Sorry, your line is breaking.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Sorry, start again. Mute. Okay.
Please confirm you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you. I was just saying thank you for your insightful delivery this morning and your charge to us as leaders. You made mention of a very important point, that it's about time that leaders begin to go through a reflection point. And you were asking us if any of us, in facing all the challenges in our businesses this year, have paused, taken a day off to think through what else we can do for our business. I wanted to find out from you, in reference to the question that you just asked, what skills can we bring to bear when it comes to personal reflection as a business leader to change the course of things that are happening in our businesses at the current moment? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Susie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Susie, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, please. I can hear you.
Okay. Now, that's a very interesting question. I think that what skills? I think, and I can give you my own example as when I was a business leader. I decided that the way the company was going, and we were going through a crisis, a similar crisis in the early 90s. And I realized that we could do better, we could be bigger, we could be more profitable. But I realized we were a very sloppy business. And I also realized that we were disengaged with the rest of the business. The first thing I did was to say, how do I engage the business? The leadership team, the young people who are in the business, and I was talking about people who have been in the business for only 3 years, because those are the people who looked at the business in a very different way. They could see all the sloppiness and all the old things that, as people who had been there for many years, we were blinded to. So the first thing I did was took 20 of them and said, go and come and tell us, what are the things you see here that you think we shouldn't do? What are the things that we are not doing here that you think we should be doing? How do we think that we can build a business 5 times bigger than this business? They went away for 1 week, and then the board met them. And I can tell you that it was a big eye-opener. Most of us were a bit nervous listening to these young people literally telling us we were old-fashioned, we were archaic, we couldn't think, we're not aggressive, we're afraid, we're not courageous. So that's one thing. Your ability to engage your business is very, very, very important, because leadership is a lonely thing. You can sit there and make yourself a very lonely person, or you can be an engaging leader. And I think the first thing to do is to be an engaging leader, because all the wisdom don't sit in your head. The second thing as a leader is that you must be knowledgeable about your business, because you need to be able to see what's going on in your business ahead of time. Because if you are going to react to development, you will always be reactive. But if you're a business leader, build the skill of being proactive. Build the skill and the knowledge and the capacity to be able to think forward and to shape your business even before, the time gets there. COVID-19 took everybody by surprise. But a research done by McKinsey shows that about 1,300 companies that they spoke to, only 25 came out of COVID-19 stronger than before. And the things that the 25 did was simply, building agility, changing their business model, engaging their business, being courageous, activating and executing with passion. So I think those are the things that I will recommend, because most leaders think that they should do everything themselves. And I say that cannot be positive. If you're a leader, you should engage. And only an engaging leader can succeed. Engage your business, engage your stakeholders, engage your customers. I don't know how many chief executives jump into the car and say, today I'm going to visit 10 clients. I know you have all your regional managers and all this and executive, whatever, but there's nothing like you feeling it personally. So if you ask me, engagement will be number one, proactive thinking and proactive action number two, and when you have decided, be decisive and executive and be courageous.
Thank you very much.
Susie,
Yamson, thank you very much.
Susie, are you okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there any hand? Oh. Is there a question? Okay.
Okay, so Kofi Dazi wants to know that for most of the times, organizations react to macro indicators and adjust their models afterwards. But what are some skills and capabilities that businesses need to be able to incorporate external data variables in their business planning?
First of all, I would then say the planning itself must be meticulous. Because if the planning process is meticulous, you will take account of external factors. But if the planning and the process itself is not meticulous enough, you will miss the external factors. And I think today, my recommendation to business leaders is that you should be able to think of the unthinkable. Something that would seem stupid to you, but could happen. And sometimes when you begin to do that, people would say, but you are, this guy maybe is a doomsayer or something. But my own experience is that we are not rigorous enough in our planning process. I hear many companies say, oh, we are going to do a strategic plan. And you read the strategic plan and you wonder whether it is a strategic plan for today or a strategic plan to respond to the past. I.e., they haven't taken account of many of the factors you are talking about in the environment. There are two elements when for any business. It's your internal factors and your external factors. And in your planning, you must bring the two together. If you don't bring the two together and you just focus on what you think you can do, then you are missing a major element which are contained in the external. For instance, today in Ghana, government and regulators have become very powerful. So if you are planning, you better take account of trends and development in your regulatory and your legal environment. If you don't do that, you may only find out that you've written a plan which may not respond to all your needs.
Okay. Ayurveda also wants to know how SMEs will raise funds to make up their working capital and capital investments needs.
Now, I know that question will come. SMEs and their capital requirements. I think that for the medium scale enterprise, I think we have a history of this country of middle scale companies having been under enormous pressure under situations like this. But I always say there are opportunities for even SMEs to come together, because you know that you are in a situation where you cannot go to a bank and raise money easily. Or if you want to raise money in a bank easily, the cost of borrowing is very high. What stops 3 or 4 SMEs in the same industry coming together, pooling their limited funds together and sharing the benefits? Because instead of having 100% of your business and not being able to fund it, if you own a third of that business and the other person has a third, and the other person has a third, you can pool funds together without going to the bank. I know it is easier said than done, but we must begin to change the culture of business in this country, because everybody wants to go alone. Every Ghanaian SME wants to do their business alone, even when they don't have money, and then they go to the bank and borrow expensive money. I think that it's time we use this crisis as an opportunity for our SMEs to begin to build joint ventures among themselves. And it's only at that time that maybe you can bring your house, and I can bring my car, and that person can bring this, and we can then use that as collateral to raise a loan from the bank. Well, if every one of us has to go to the bank to borrow money and raise and look for collateral, it's going to take us a very, very long time. The experience that I found in India, and everybody who has lived in India will tell you, Indian businesses are not afraid to pull together 2 or 3 companies and form a business that they then realize are very viable. So that will be my answer to that. Let's learn to pull resources together. Even in the family, let's learn to pull resources together rather than always moan the banks are not going to give us money. The banks will not give us money. We've been saying this for the past 50 years. They are only interested in going to buy bonds and buying treasury bills. And they will then tell us and say, you are too risky, because maybe you also don't keep good books. But if you pull together and you begin to practice very basic governance structures, then the banks will be interested in you. So let us do our homework first as small businesses.
Okay, Angela Okai wants to know that you talked about boards not criticizing, but provide support for to management. She wants to know how boards can do that effectively and not seem to be micromanaging.
No, the board's role is very clear. The board's role is to help with strategy development and also then supervise and oversee the execution. If you wrote a strategy 3 years ago And then you suddenly find yourself in today's situation. You definitely know that your plan will not respond to today's development. So your board must lead the reading of that strategy and challenge the business. And the board itself must offer very constructive ideas. I don't like boards that will sit down and only criticize executives. They are not being helpful. If we're a board, you have to help with the development of the strategy. So the board must come to the meeting with what they themselves believe in and how they want the company to go. If we're a multinational, Angela, as you are, your strategy may have been driven from your global board, but you have to operationalize it locally. And that is where your board must help you to do it. But the board should never be involved in the executive roles and responsibility. That will be counterproductive. And that is where we have problems with many state-owned enterprises where chairmen and board members want to behave as if they are managing directors and executive directors.
Okay, so we will take one more question. We have exhausted our time. So Richmond wants to know that how can new businesses, new startups do in this? What can they do in this challenging times?
New businesses.
Yes.
Now, if we're a new business, I'd like to believe that you had a business framework. If that framework has been torn apart by what is going on, revisit that framework and the fundamentals and the building blocks of that business plan and try to reshape it to fit the current environment. And if you recall, I said that there are things you can do to build competitive advantage for yourself. Indeed, you will be at an advantageous position because you are a new entrant. You can see things that today, maybe those who have been there long time ago are refusing to see. So you have advantage to do those things to build very strong competitive advantage for yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Yamson. Shika says, nuggets for leadership, always awesome to learn at your feet. Thank you, Dr. Yamson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We've had a great time, and I believe each one of us will be able to work around what Chairman has given us this morning. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so you can get the recording of this session on YouTube, on our YouTube page, Ishmael Yamson and Associates. You can visit there and then watch it again. Thank you.